What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new post-draft episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I'm your host, Douglas Creevy. As always, alongside my co-host, Cameron Parker and Gage Madrid. The babysitter's gone, so the kids will play. That's what's going on tonight. What's going on, gentlemen?
You know what's funny is the babysitter's away, but yet I think what is he at Disney World?
Yeah.
So he's babysitting. He's babysitting, you know, in a completely different state. No,
he has like one kid. That's not even babysitting anymore.
hey, but by the same time,
kid's babysitting him. Let's just be honest here.
But by the same time,
I'm totally seeing Glenn on the teacups like, wow!
But by the same time, though, you know, Disney World, you know, is a place that I would love to go back to. It's a place, Sayer visits Disney World. I don't know how often. Like, it seems like he visits that place like 5 times in a year. Like, the place is just a lot of fun, and I hope I could be able to go back there.
I've never been because I'm poor.
Facts. Last time I went was on my honeymoon. Ha ha! It was the happiest place on earth that week. Moving on. So we have obviously a bunch of stuff to catch up on.
We do?
Yes. Gage told me that there was some things that happened this weekend.
Wow.
So
only a couple
on it and go from there. But
I think this is going to be a pretty short show.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it'll be rather short because there's not a whole lot of information to talk about.
Right, exactly. Not a lot of information.
But I think that we can come up with something. Sorry, I'm just doing my...
Who doesn't love two things at once?
I'm not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. All right. All right. So, obviously, the biggest news coming out of the draft, in the draft, during the draft, before the draft, Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
I kind of want to address the way that I look at it, and then I'll pass it on to you guys, since you two are huge Colorado fans. Don't lie, Cam. I know that you're a closeted Colorado fan. You claim Nebraska, but that's not true. So
who's talking?
We go into the draft, and everybody's talking about Shedeur Sanders and first-round pick, and he'll go in the top 5. He'll go in the top 10, what have you. So I kind of want to look at why this whole thing happened with him dropping into the 5th round. And I think a lot of it is media's fault. A lot of it is fans' fault. A lot of it is Deion's fault. A lot of it's Shedeur's fault. Like, there's a lot of blame to go around. So when you look at this draft class this year, I don't think that there is that much debate on the talent that Shedeur has. Like, I don't think he was going to go in the 1st, but he definitely is worth a 2nd, at minimum 3rd, right? Like, that should have been where he went 2nd or 3rd talent-wise. But what we also have to remember is that the whole draft process includes interviews, like going in for a job interview, right? Mm-hmm. It can't just be, I don't care about your team. I don't care about your team. I'm not going to prepare for anything. You have to act like you want the job and prepare for that job. And a lot of what we're hearing is that his interviews were awful. Worst interviews that some of the GMs and coaches have ever had in the pre-draft process. Shedeur didn't really prepare for the pre-draft process. And when you look at the amount of teams that were even interested in a quarterback, you're looking at 4 teams, maybe 5. Like, you're not looking to sell yourself to every team. Like, not 32 teams are not looking at getting a quarterback. You're looking at maybe 4 or 5. And so you specifically have to make sure that you are trying to put your best foot forward in front of those teams. Now, if you go in for an interview with a team that's not looking to draft a quarterback, you still have to put your best foot forward. GMs talk, owners talk, coaches talk. And if you're going to go in there with headphones around your neck, playing music, not knowing the playbook, not being able to answer any questions, and you get upset when you get confronted on that, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So when you first start to break this thing down, Shedeur's tape isn't great. It's good, but it's not great. right? Like if you, and we were talking about this in the green room before, if you put Shedeur in last year's draft or next year's draft, I think the highest he's going to go is third round, right? So the only reason he was considered high this time is because there wasn't a lot of quarterback talent in the draft. Now, when you break down everything that he did during the season, he was 13 for 12. Like he's about a 500 quarterback, and he was 1-9 versus ranked opponents. So that's right there. You're starting off on the wrong foot. And I don't know who was in his ear. I don't know who was giving him advice. I don't know who told him that he was going to be a top 5 pick, but they were wrong, and he should have let them go or pushed them out of the house or said, Daddy, no, that's not true, right? So when you're looking to get a job, and this is the same thing for any job that you're going for, whether it's football, whether it's McDonald's, whether it's Walmart, it doesn't matter. If you're going in for a job interview, you have to be prepared for that interview. And he just was not. He didn't take the pre-draft process seriously. It was one of the worst off seasons as far as preparing for a draft that we've probably ever seen. He didn't like getting called out. He was not engaged. He made people feel small. People were saying that he acted like he was entitled, that he didn't care as much about football as he did about being famous or making money or any of that, right? So then he goes into an interview with the Giants, and one of the things that came out is that Shedeur said, I don't need you. You need me. Nope. Nope. Not happening. So when you look at the talent level of Shedeur Sanders, yes, he should have gone in the second or third round. But the quarterback spot, from what Drew Brees has said, is 70% mental, 30% physical.
Yes.
You are banking that your talent level is high enough to go in the top 5, but you act like an entitled arsehole, people are not going to want to draft you. And that's the reason why he fell to 5. It's not because there's racism at play. It's not because there's some conspiracy. Teams just did not like Shedeur and didn't want that entitlement and all that baggage that comes with him on their team as a backup quarterback.
The other layer to this, you hit it on the head.
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head. The other layer to this that makes it completely bizarre too is the fact that the Browns spent capital on a quarterback before they drafted Shedeur.
And not a very good one at that.
And not a very good one. And frankly, one that, it's one where if you're talking about adding a quarterback, I would have much rather had Shedeur on my team than Dylan Gabriel. And you're also, if you're Shedeur and even if you're Dylan, you're going into a completely awkward situation because now you're putting Shedeur in a room as teammates, basically with Gabriel, who was there with the Heisman Trophy, like attendees with Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter, so it's just like, it's a pretty awkward situation now that, so I think the part of it for me where I was really disappointed with was media, if I'm being completely honest.
Mel Kiper,
and that's
calling you out by name, sir.
That's exactly where I was going to go with, because look, his rants and continuous rants, it was unprofessional. It didn't look great. And I think that when we are pushing and pushing and pushing this idea that the NFL does not know how to draft quarterbacks, that just is further proof that for the 50,000 years you've been working NFL drafts, that you are a complete moron. Because the NFL does know how to evaluate quarterbacks. How many quarterbacks later have turned out to be success stories? Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, it was a bit later. Should he have been drafted? No. Brock Osweiler ended up being a decent pick for the Broncos. Ended up working out. They don't win a Super Bowl without him. Kirk Cousins, they drafted RG3 in that same year. Was that supposed to be a good situation? Absolutely not. But Kirk Cousins ends up working out because Mike Shanahan wanted Kirk Cousins, and guess what? It all worked out. So don't play dumb with me, you old man, and make it seem like, the NFL doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. You are coming across completely entitled. So yes, we are reading a report that says that the Browns have an A+ draft, and you're the only person who gave the Browns an A+ draft because they drafted Shedeur Sanders. Now, all that said, was the value good enough of taking Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round? Probably. But again, it goes back to how dumb and bizarre the whole situation was that Shedeur was drafted behind Dillon Gabriel. And again, we would be having a completely different conversation about this if it was handled in the normal ways of the NFL draft. Would we be complaining if they drafted Shedeur Sanders at 2?
No.
And then they took Dillon Gabriel? Absolutely not. Because you typically see situations where a player is drafted 2nd overall, right? I just referenced Kirk Cousins and RG3, where they're taken, and then they take one a bit later, and for some reason the first quarterback works out or the second quarterback works out. They just cover their bases all the time. But you know what? It didn't work out that way. And there's also a little small part in terms of Shedeur Sanders I think we need to talk about, because this is something that I think with fans and people who have critiqued his game for the longest time, it's a mixed bag on this, where they think it was an offensive line problem and not a Shedeur problem. To quote Sean Payton, do you know what quarterbacks that when they're sacked, do you know what sacks are actually? They're quarterback stats. So basically, Sean Payton, who was a proponent of the idea that, he should have been drafted a bit later should have been drafted earlier, said it himself. Sacks are a quarterback stat. Basically saying it was Shedeur's fault that he was being sacked at Colorado. So I think I'm more annoyed about the media and coming off like, they're smarter than everybody else, and it was really one person really that was doing this. But I'm so disappointed with this whole evaluation process, because it is truly kind of come out and basically proven of who were the ball knowers and who were not, ball knowers.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot to unpack here. I agree with pretty much everything both of you guys have said. I think that the whole process for Shedeur was approached the wrong way. Him not having an agent whose job it is to gauge where teams view you and how you should approach that process really came back to bite him in the ass. Deion Sanders had a false evaluation of where Shedeur was going to go. Deion, who was acting as Shedeur's de facto agent, thought that Shedeur was a lock to go in the top 5. And in fairness to Deion, that was kind of the general thought process entering the draft cycle. But again, as time went on, Shedeur approached this whole thing incorrectly because teams did not have Shedeur rated as highly as it was originally thought by his own camp. So we get down to the Shrine Bowl in Texas, which I traveled down to. Yep. And Shedeur Sanders was going to be the big marquee event at practice. And the team that Shedeur's on comes out, and Shedeur walks out in shorts and a T-shirt. Mm-hmm. And everybody's looking around like, what is he doing? Why is he not practicing? Mm-hmm. And a report came out 15 minutes later that, which I now think was BS, said that the top teams in the draft told him not to participate, not to work out. No. Yeah. Then we get to the combine, and it's the exact same thing. He doesn't work out. He participates in interviews, and those interviews don't go well. Mike hit it perfectly on the head here. You have to go into interviews, even with teams that you don't want to play for and teams you don't think are going to draft you, with the same mindset as you would with the top team on your list. You have to be a professional. You have to be prepared. You have to study. You have to be engaged. You have to answer the questions that are asked. All of these things are just simple things that every single prospect who goes into the draft has to do. And again, Shedeur never had anybody in his corner telling him, dude, teams don't view you as high as you think they do. You need to participate in this shit. You need to be as engaged as possible in these meetings. And with the report coming out from Brian Dable, where he gave Shedeur a package of plays to study, and Shedeur was completely ill-prepared for that interview. I was somebody who was a big proponent of Shedeur coming out, but with all these reports coming out from multiple different sources, even if only 50% of them are true, this just paints a bad picture for Shedeur. And I agree with Cam as well. Like, the Browns made a stupid situation even more stupid because they drafted Dylan Gabriel before Shedeur. If you thought that freaking Shedeur was good enough to draft in the 5th round, why not draft him in the 3rd round over Dylan Gabriel? I think that if Shedeur had approached this process completely different from the beginning, he probably would have been drafted in the 1st round, even though he's not exactly a 1st-round talent. He's a 2nd-round talent, in my opinion. He would have been drafted probably by the Steelers, or the Giants would have come up for him instead of Jackson Dart had he not bombed that interview. So, for me, I think that's why Shedeur ended up falling, was because it was approached wrong from his own camp, and in particular, Deion Sanders.
So this is why I believe that the Browns took Dylan Gabriel first and then Shedeur Sanders. You invested a 3rd-round pick in Dylan Gabriel, right? So you have your quarterback on the roster for the future, you hope, right? Unless they're planning on getting another one in next year's draft. Now, with everything that you've heard from Shedeur Sanders, if you draft him in the 5th and he does not work out, or his attitude doesn't change, or something of that, or Deion is a distraction, I don't know. Whatever the situation may be, you did not invest a lot in him. He is now able to be cut.
Oh, what's the difference between a 3rd and a 5th? Yeah. You can still cut him if he's a 3rd versus a 5th. Why bring Dylan Gabriel into the equation?
But the 3rd's also getting paid more than the 5th.
It's
all I'm saying is he's now a 5th-round selection, and it's a lot easier to explain cutting a 5th-round selection than a 3rd-round selection.
I think it's equal. I actually think it's equal. Because there are times where, teams have moved on from a higher round draft pick, albeit maybe a year later, or maybe that same year. So I think it's about equal. But I just think that what's interesting though, is, and as fate would have it, Shedeur is falling into a great situation for him, in the sense that there's nobody in that room I like at all.
And this is what I told Gage in the chat when he was live streaming the draft. Like, Shedeur is on the team he should have gone to. There's only 2 teams that I think would have fit Shedeur. One's the Browns and one's the Steelers. The Browns, because Stefanski is known for getting the best out of his pocket passer quarterbacks. So Shedeur is going to be able to take advantage of getting the best coach for a quarterback for a team that he could have gone to. I don't remember where else I was going with that. Oh, the Steelers, he would have been put in a situation where you have a solid offensive line. You have a solid running game. You now have DK Metcalf. You have a solid defense that can help carry you. So those are the 2 teams I thought that he could go to.
Yeah.
But just because, and I told Gage, like, Shedeur Sanders is the 2nd best quarterback on that roster. But that doesn't mean that's a good thing, right? Like, that's more of an indictment on the Browns quarterback room, because
depending on how you.
Shedeur Sanders has some talent, but he shouldn't be a 1st-year starter.
You say he's the 2nd best quarterback. Who in that quarterback room is better than Shedeur?
Joe Flacco. You can say what you want, but look at the last time Joe Flacco played for the Browns.
They went to the playoffs, to be fair, but
they did.
Yeah.
They did,
and then look at how he played on the Colts.
Well,
he wasn't great on the Colts last year.
I'm just saying, Kevin Stefanski gets the best out of pocket passing quarterbacks. Joe Flacco had one of his best seasons ever on Kevin Stefanski's team. So Joe Flacco is the number one quarterback on that team.
I think the point, though, is if you're looking at prospect versus prospect or where they're at, I'm probably taking the prospect of Shedeur Sanders over Joe Flacco at 60 years old. I think that's the point that Gage is making. But you're
Gabriel first.
But you're right. I mean, it's a situation where Flacco, he's done it before. So I'm excited to see how it works out. I'm curious. The scenario and situation that he's going to, interestingly enough, and I don't know if it's going to work out, has the makings to where it does. I'll just say that, like, it has the makings to where it does, but I don't know if it will.
Yeah, and again, like, talent level, Shedeur's second best quarterback on the roster. But if he doesn't change his attitude and the reason as to why he didn't get drafted until the 5th round, he's not going to last long.
And indications are that he hasn't, because after he got drafted, he had that lavish-ass party with celebrities, booze, and $100,000 in cash in a briefcase. So we'll see.
Yep.
Yeah, and now and again, like, this isn't giving the Browns props because they might have taken Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd because they love Dylan Gabriel. I mean, more power to you. I don't see.
It just looks weird.
If you love Dylan Gabriel, then something is wrong with your evaluation process.
But even then, if you love Gabriel, you're not taking Shedeur. Like, it's just such a weird,
stupid.
I think that we're going to need to see. I'm hoping Shedeur adjusts properly, but I also want to see what kind of effect Dion is going to have. Because I don't know if any of this is true, but there's things floating around the internet that Dion wants to go to the first meeting between Shedeur and the Browns and get some things off his chest. And please, God, don't let that happen.
But even then, I don't know if he's going to have a lot of time, because once the regular season of the NFL hits, is about a week or two later is when the college football season stuff hits. And there are far more deadlines to meet and take care of as a college football coach than an NFL coach. So if I kind of take that reporter's hogwash. So
I hope so.
So if it is, I would be a bit disappointed in Dion at that point. Because you are caring a little bit more about your son than you are that organization, which isn't a bad thing. You should care for your son, but, like, you're a head football coach, right? And this is now his time. This is now Shedeur's time to basically make him grow. So
we had Clayton first.
I would be a bit disappointed.
And let's just be honest here. They just lost the best player in college football. So they're going to have to make some serious adjustments on two sides of the ball. Mike, your opinion is wrong.
How did they lose Abdul Carter?
Anyway.
Oh, Mike.
Say what you want. I'm just saying. All right.
Travis Hunter is a first-team All-Pro at 2 positions, will you eat crow?
Yes, but if he's not, will you?
Yes. Okay. If he's a first-team All-Pro at 1.
Whoa.
Okay. I will eat. Okay. I will eat crow if it's not 2, but I will only eat half the portion of crow if it's 1.
I will eat the crow if he is an All-Pro at all.
Okay, fair, same. If he's not an All-Pro, then I will gladly eat the crow.
Sounds good.
I'm just along for the ride because Travis Hunter's a ball player.
Is a what?
Yeah, you heard me.
I didn't. What'd you say?
Travis Hunter's a ball player, and he's going to make. He's going into, and I think that
you're not wrong. In college, he was a ball player, a better than average ball player.
But I think that for Travis Hunter, he's going into an unbelievable situation for him. It's not the Browns. It's not anybody else. He's going into the best possible situation for himself.
All right, so let's get to this Broncos draft. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players that we drafted, and then Gage, you're gonna have to fill us in on all these UDFAs because there's a crap ton.
And everything
full list.
And
I'll get up all the
and everything that I know, reading stuff through Broncos Twitter and Broncos comments, it really seems like a lot of fans really like this draft.
Yeah, they love it.
Oh yeah. All right, so I will say I initially I was not happy with the first pick, but I also didn't do that much research into him before because I didn't think that's where they were going.
It's the Shaq meme. I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game.
I said no. All right, so the Denver Broncos with their first round pick number 20, draft the best DB in college football. You can argue all you want. He's got the Philip Award, sir.
Keep going.
Jahdae Barron out of Texas to team with PS2 and Riley Moss. And we think that this is going to not be good for McMillan, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys want to go ahead and break down, I'll go through the list of who we drafted, and then we'll break it down.
Yeah.
So Jahdae Barron in round 1. We had R.J. Harvey in round 2, running back out of UCF. Then we had Pat Bryant, wide receiver out of Illinois, in the 3rd round. We had Savion Jones, who's an edge, correct?
Interior. Edge interior.
Okay. Edge interior. Another pick out of round 3. Then we had, is it Quay or Q? Q Robinson in the 4th. We had Jeremy Crawshaw. I love that last name, Crawshaw. Punter in the 6th round. And then Caleb Loner or Loner?
I think it's Loner.
Loner? That's what I thought. Out of Utah in round 7. And he's, what is he? Tight end. Sorry, tight end.
Yeah, I have to start it out this way. And I don't mean to personally, call out some Bronco fans, but that are upset about this entire draft. It's just, I find it funny, right? I find it funny because myself went into this entire draft with a completely open mind about what they were wanting to do. And that includes the first round, right? So then we don't get it, right? We don't get it. We do not get what is our personal favorite or the direction that we would have wanted to go. And the fact that the other teams on our division made good decisions certainly doesn't help matters. But, I think that it's interesting to me that when it doesn't go your way, we start throwing fits. And look, I think that when the dust settles, there's only one person who we care about and about the coach and the direction of this football team, and that is Sean Payton.
Yep.
These players are going into the best possible situation of their lives. And when you peel back the curtain of the Jahdae Barron selection, and that selection specifically, it was perfect. Will Johnson was starting to kind of slide down some boards. It seems like he's got a deteriorated knee, I think, and so that's one of the reasons why he's falling down or fell down, if you will, to the 2nd round. Very scary injury and something to follow, certainly. But Barron, when you kind of peel back the layers of the fact that he was coached by another Joseph brother, Mike. So it wasn't Mickey Joseph, but this one was Terry Joseph, a fast up-and-coming rising coach. I think he actually was on the Saints coaching staff last year before he went to the Texas Longhorns. So it's a case where the Broncos simply did not think that he was going to be there at 20. And they were probably fielding calls. That's one of the reasons why it went down so much. But look, could they have taken Emeka Egbuka? Sure. And frankly, I'm more on the other side of this that had nothing to do with them probably liking Emeka Egbuka. It was the fact that I think they thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to be taking Jahdae Barron because I'm a big Egbuka fan, but him going to Tampa Bay makes no sense in the world. Yeah. And so the fact that he made it to 20 and them taking all these calls, It just made it even more obvious to them that Barron was going to be the pick. And he is exactly, how would I say this? The Denver Broncos as a whole drafted like the Philadelphia Eagles, and we should not be upset about this.
No, we should
They
not.
literally took the Quinyon Mitchell, the Cooper DeJean type of pick with their first overall selection and built their roster from there with value, with depth, with some dart throws here and there. They feel very comfortable about their team going forward.
Yes.
Yeah, and Denver had a top 10 evaluation on Jahdae Barron.
And he should have been. He's a top 10 player, in my opinion.
I saw no scenario where he would last past 13 to the Miami Dolphins, and somehow he did. It's kind of funny because Mike and I both wanted the Broncos to come away with a blue chip defensive player in the first round. We were thinking defensive line. That's who we were thinking, but they still came away with a blue chip defensive player at a premium position. It's just not the position we were thinking. And I'm okay with that. When you look at Jahdae Barron's tape, man, instincts, ball skills, just football IQ in general, tackling ability, he's freaking phenomenal in man coverage, which is what Denver likes to run most of the time. So this dude can make plays. Just like George Payton said, he's a weapon on the defensive side of the ball. And in the run game, he is a phenomenal tackler, and we had some issues at the second level with linebacker and nickel play in the run game, and that's what caused some of the leaks that sprung in the Baltimore game, in the Buffalo game, etc. And we're not going to see that anymore with Jahdae Barron in there. He is going to help out with that so much, and there's some other players in the draft that we're going to talk about later that can help out in that area as well. But when you look at why the Broncos took him, again, man, he was a top 10 player that happened to fall down to 20. He was the best player available. It was a no-brainer.
Well,
including Jahdae Barron, like Jahdae Barron and all the other draft picks, high character guys. Every single one of them. No issues, no problems. Humble about everything. And Kevin Dandino set it up there. Jahdae, when he got the call, asked to be put on speakerphone so we can thank everyone for making his mom's life better. Like, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Multiple team captains as well.
Yeah. And I loved this is, everybody knows, and people in Broncos country should be by now, a big Bo Nix fan. I loved his everybody loved his introductory press conference when he was a Bronco. Barron actually beat it. Like, that was a perfect example about how you win over a room by talking about values and surrounding it with your play style. From there, you talk about the presence of family and then carrying that over into, the organization and how happy you are in being here, and then how much you could be able to impact the team going forward. That was 101 of how to win over a room and how to give a speech unprompted with no script. Like, it was perfect. And I think that the part of it for Barron that makes this so exciting, when we think of the Talanoa Hufanga signing, think of that, but think of that for the cornerback side of things, right? Like, just the cornerback side of things. Like, it is unreal the type of mismatches that Denver can be able to cook up with that secondary. And, oh, by the way, Barron can play safety. So, like, I think that what gets this so exciting is they can now mix and match however they want with Riley Moss and Jahdae Barron. And, frankly, because of Barron's versatility, and he's so good at it, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if, and this is not a discredit to Moss either, but it's just I would not be the least bit surprised if they put Barron on the outside, and then you had Moss and McMillan work the inside, and then you still kind of groom and mold, Chris Abrams' drain, but the cornerback room is set, and I think that as far as making it a bit of an easier decision for the Broncos to take Barron, I think was really the latter part of the year. And I hate to use two words, and look, if he's listening, I apologize.
Oh, no.
But like Levi Wallace, I think Levi Wallace ruined a lot. I think Levi Wallace ruined a lot of stuff for the Broncos and their confidence later on down the year. And Jaquan McMillan maybe at times too. They gave up 413 yards after catch from that slot corner position. We love Jaquan McMillan, but there's something maybe we need to be talking about just a little bit more in the fact that maybe McMillan's kind of taking a step down a little bit. But I mean, Barron is just, he was a need, but it was a need that they just didn't think he was going to be there at all.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I thought that Jaquan was maybe going to get traded during the draft. I thought that maybe they were going to be looking to pick up some extra draft capital. And at the end of the day, man, I think that they view Jahdae Barron as almost like their new Chris Harris Jr.
Maybe
when they're in nickel, then they'll put Jahdae in the slot. But when they're in base, maybe they could take Riley off and actually put Jahdae on the boundary. So that's just something to think about there. I just think that, again, there's so many different versatile ways that you can use him. But just like you said, Cam, so many big plays were given up last year from the nickel position, both in the pass game and in the run game. The highs are very high with Jaquan, but the lows are quite low with him as well. And unfortunately, I think that that's just kind of the ceiling that you're going to reach as an undrafted player. That's really the expectation sometimes, is that you're going to have rough plays like that. And I love Jaquan. Don't get me wrong. He's a great story, but I do feel like at the end of the day, Denver needed to get better at that position. We just didn't think it was going to happen in the first round, but you're getting a defensive Swiss Army knife here. They didn't just get a nickel corner. They got a nickel corner, a boundary corner, and a safety.
There's a reason why. This is kind of funny to me. There's a reason why I always thought the team that I thought was either going to get him was the 49ers, right? And I always had him within the top 10 because he just screams Niner. Like, they love Talanoa Hufanga, right? Lost him, and so it feels crazy to me that you now have a Swiss Army knife safety in Hufanga and you have a Swiss Army knife corner in Jahdae Barron. If you guys are looking for some comps or some archetypes to work with Barron, you don't need to look no further than these two people, in my opinion. Brian Branch and Cooper DeJean. Those are the two players that I would be rolling with if you're actually talking about archetype. Two phenomenal players, high IQ, high impact type of players. They are. He is going to be. He's going to be perfect here. That's all I'll say.
We're going to call our defense Boontang. I love that. We'll stick with that one. Now,
just think about it, guys. If we got our Cooper DeJean, then I think Broncos country would be happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there were a lot of people that were freaking out after the first pick because they're like, why would you waste a first-round pick on a nickel? But you have to remember, like, at this point in football, with the way that the offense and the defense are set up, nickel's basically a starting position now.
It is.
It is.
So even if he's just playing nickel, he's on the field 95% of defensive snaps.
Yep. All right, next pick.
Next pick. This is one that I didn't see coming. I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't really look into it because I was looking at Omarion Hampton. I was looking at Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson. I'm still a little confused on why RJ Harvey over Caleb Johnson, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on what you think of RJ Harvey and why they picked him over Caleb Johnson.
I think for me, all you need to do is just ask Sean Payton. It seemed really obvious after hearing him talk about it. Harvey was plan C. Like, plan A was Ashton Genty. Let's make it full on clear. He was Ashton Genty. And I see Jack in the comments. They made the right call. The Raiders made the right call in taking Ashton Genty. And actually, they crushed the draft, by the way. Like, they actually really did a good job of drafting this year. But like, I think that it was, then after that, it was Trevion. And then it got to be a bit of a dicey situation because at that top of the rounds, you had teams like Cleveland and Chicago who were really, you were going to have to send actually a bit of a big haul to trade up into the second round. At that point, with where things were going, for them to actually solidify themselves as a landing spot for Travion Henderson. After that, it became a bit dicey. And then you started to see, and we'll get to this a little bit later too, but you started to kind of see tight ends come off the board, right? And then it started basically seeing, okay, what position are they going to go with here? Because Ferguson went a lot higher than expected. Some of the other tight ends went a bit higher than expected. So what direction, were they going to go? And they felt like it was best that they went and got their plan C, and it was RJ Harvey. And if you look and you watch his tape and you see the production, just the overall, not even analytical production, but just the production of RJ Harvey, you put him, and I to quote Ryan Koenigsberg, because it is a really good point, you put him on Boise State and Ashton Genty on UCF, RJ Harvey might actually be putting up the same type of numbers as Ashton Genty, given a little bit less. The running style is about the same. I think, granted, he didn't exactly have some of the pass catching opportunities, but he's got contact balance. I mean, he's got incredible vision. Vision is incredible. And I think a large part of this had to do with the Broncos missing out on Bucky Irving. And that is a very famous comparison archetype that is being thrown around with Harvey. Obviously not just the number, but it is a very good comparison. I think the other ones is Josh Jacobs that I think I've seen would be another one. But you're talking about a player who has running back 1, 3 down back potential for Sean. And I think that the true joker of this football team is going to end up being RJ Harvey, not Evan Ingram. Like, that is how high I think the Broncos are high on Harvey. So it may not have been on the radar of, maybe some people in Broncos country, but he was certainly and very quickly on the board of Sean Payton rather fast.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you look at Harvey's tape, man, it is really, really good. Like, he's got a super quick jump cut to the outside that is sensational. I mean, the dude can get outside and he can get an angle on a running back or on a linebacker, and he is gone. He's got, again, excellent vision, like Cam said. He's got patience. Like, waiting for his rushing lanes to develop is one of the biggest strong characteristics of his game and why the Broncos like him so much. He can run a bunch of different routes out of the backfield, wheel routes, Texas routes, choice routes. All of those things are now back on the menu for the Denver Broncos, and we all know how much Sean Payton loves those kind of things. So with Harvey, he's going to fit this RB by committee approach. This also indicates that they really like Audric Estime. I think that Harvey can pass protect. He could get better at it, but again, he is only 5'8", 200 and some odd pounds, so he's probably not going to be expected to do that very often. I do think you're going to have to probably bring somebody else in to pass protect on third down, but again, outside of that, I think Harvey can do a lot of sensational things, both in the passing game and in the run game. He's shifty, speedy, and explosive, and he's somebody who's not afraid to take contact either. Like, he will fight for those extra yards. He doesn't leave yards on the field. I was really impressed watching his film a lot more extensively in this cycle, and yeah, man, I'm super pumped.
5'8", 205. That's what he measures at.
Yep.
And I said it before. I don't know if Jack missed this, but the archetype that I think is perfect for this is Bucky Irving or, Josh Jacobs. I think those are the two that I think is great. I will say, though, there are times, and this just goes to his vision and patience, there are times where his running style reminds me a little bit of Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
With the way that he sees how the holes develop a little bit, and then he's gone. And that's that 4.4 speed. And I think this is a great starting point of a talking point that is going to be rather famous when we talk about some of these other prospects. But for as much crap as we were giving the media, I think that when you look at it from the Broncos side of things, if you were a media darling who were really high on some of these players, just granted a bit later, you're going to absolutely love this draft, which is why guys like Todd McShay, Josh Norris, were really high on the Denver Broncos draft because they really liked these players. They just had no idea that they were going to be taken, this high. I think even Dane Brugler was really high on the Broncos draft. So just as we kind of move forward, RJ Harvey was like the beginning. You could say Barron, but RJ Harvey was like the beginning point for the Broncos of why a lot of media pundits, and I saw a lot of people say that a lot of media people hated the draft. That's not what I saw. I've seen a lot of media people love the draft for Denver.
The ball-knowing ones do.
Yeah, at least the ball-knowing ones really loved it, but yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat talk about Estime being gone after minicamp or done. I think it's the same thing with like the wide receiver room, right? Like I think that the front office and the coaching staff is higher on the wide receiver room than the fans have been. I think it's the same thing with Estime. I think that they're higher on Estime than we think they are, right? So if you look at the running back room right now, it's RJ Harvey, Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Bidet, and Blake Watson. And out of those, I don't think Estime is the one that's gone.
Well, and guys, like, Engage, back me up on this. Like, he's going to be 21 years old. Like, he was drafted, at 20. So, I mean, like, let's kind of cut some slack here, and let a kid grow,
Yeah.
And I mean, after this year, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and, we don't look all that smart anyway. If that ends up being the case and, they do move on. But I just think that, like, he's 21 years old, and it was pretty clear as like the season was winding down, despite the fact that, they inactivated him for the playoff game, he looked good. Like, he looked good. And I think that there's also another player in this running back room that they're high on and not high on. And I think they are still high on Blake Watson as well. But they are not high on Jaleel McLaughlin. And I think that was pretty evident with the selection of RJ Harvey.
And I think one of the things that hindered Estime was the fact that we as fans were relying on him because of what we weren't seeing out of McLaughlin and out of Javonte Williams. So we're expecting this big, huge rookie season. He just wasn't ready for that yet.
No.
So I don't think the coaching staff is. I mean, at some point last year, I'm sure he was in the doghouse. Like, there were some fumbling issues. He was in the doghouse.
And that was beginning of the season.
I don't think he is now.
Right.
But looking back on last season, it almost kind of makes sense that you don't play him in that last game.
Right.
Right? Like, why put him in there? Let's say he goes out there and he fumbles again. Confidence gone. Like,
he's shot.
He's shot. You're never going to get him again. He's going to, we're going to think of him the same way as Javonte Williams, right? Like, he had one good season and then got hurt and then he was never the same. You're going to think the same thing of Estime. He goes in there, he fumbles. Oh, we don't need him. Get rid of him. He's horrible. Don't ever play him again. Why would you do that to him? Right?
Right.
So if the coaching staff has confidence in Estime, and so do I think he's going to be a great running back. But now you have RJ Harvey coming in to take pressure off of Jaleel McLaughlin, which then takes pressure off of Estime. So now you have 3 running backs that you can rotate pretty consistently, and that's not even including Blake Watson.
The other side of this, and it's just the elephant in the room, all the backs do need to get better at pass protection. That's just that is just the one area where if you are going to be looking at bringing in another running back, he's going to have to be a pass protecting running back, and one where maybe that is kind of a veteran, if you will, into the room, and that's probably why guys are punching and stuff for like J.K. Dobbins or a Nick Chubb or whatever. But like I just think that if you're going to be talking about a glaring weakness and just with the youth of the room, it's going to have to be pass protection. Like they are going to have to be better pass protectors and everything. But I just think that my growing theme overall with this draft class is they weren't really looking for just team fits. They were looking at how can they be with this organization for 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's an overarching theme as we get to each and every pick.
Well, and I think it's a little insane. Like for those 8 years that we were just god awful, everybody's like, in the draft, you have to go BPA. You build a team by going BPA.
Mhm.
And now Denver goes BPA.
I
and
know.
People are freaking out.
I
Like,
know.
what was that pick? BPA. Like, all these guys that they drafted are guys that they had higher than other players. That's why they drafted
That's
them.
usually how it goes in the draft, by the way.
Right? Like, this is the draft we wanted for 8 years.
Right.
And now we get it, and you're like, what's going on? Like, come on now. Trust the process.
And these reports coming out of Jacksonville today have indicated that these teams' boards are way different than the consensus big boards out there, because Pat Bryant wasn't Pat Bryant, it was RJ Harvey that was way down the line on the big board, and the Jacksonville Jaguars were having conversations about wanting to take him, and just a couple of picks before Jacksonville could, Denver did. So clearly, RJ Harvey wasn't a reach because there was a team that was pissed off that they lost out on him. And then they were also thinking about taking Pat Bryant, too, who's a native of Jacksonville, by the way. They were thinking about taking him, and Denver got him, too. So there are other teams out there that have these guys rated higher than the consensus big board. I mean, Sean said it himself. They look at those boards, and they're embarrassingly wrong almost all the time, according to Sean. So, yeah, man, when it comes to the Harvey pick, though, I think this just further indicates that the Broncos are going to be approaching this by with an RB by committee approach, just like Sean Payton has always done. Sean Payton has never had a bell cow back. He has always tried to divvy up the reps as much as possible, and right now I think that those reps are going to go all to RJ Harvey, Audric Estime, and Jaleel McLaughlin.
Just so everybody knows, you can get cheap viewers on streamboo.com. Just wanted to throw that out there. So, speaking of Pat Bryant, and this was the pick that I got a lot of hate on Twitter.
You're not the only one.
I did not like this pick. And I can sort of understand it because we do have a lot of options at wide receiver. But I do think that there is every opportunity for Pat to come in rotating with like Vele and Franklin and work his way up.
Yeah. I think there's layers to this of why it's perfect.
Yes.
Because, and I actually don't mean it necessarily from Troy Franklin's side. I think that, and specifically for Pat Bryant, I love the comment that Judson made in here, which was Isaac Tesla went pick 70. And that goes exactly to what we were saying, is that like teams' draft boards are going to be completely different. And going into a very deep year, we should have come to expect that. Like teams are going to be, evaluating things a lot differently. I mean, heck, just look simple at the first round, right? We were even told that Colston Loveland was viewed as tight end 1 over Tyler Warren, according to some teams, not all, but some teams. And look what happened. He went to the Chicago Bears ahead of Tyler Warren. It happens. It happens. Teams view things a bit differently. I actually think that that Pat Bryant isn't actually a little Jordan Humphrey comp, I should say. That's actually Trent Sherfield. If you're going to be looking at a little Jordan Humphrey type of comparison, it's actually him. But I just think when you look at it and you fit the nitty gritty and of his ability to be flexible to go, on the outside or even play in the slot, there's one player in particular that I think this is insurance for, and that is Devon Bailey. As much as they actually drafted him later, he was an older rookie that was coming in. And I think that this was just about insurance, had nothing to do with them feeling confident, and really liking him, because they clearly do love Devon Bailey. But I think that this was just about, in the future, you got to also plan for the idea that, Vele might actually retire a bit sooner rather than later, maybe like Puka Nacua, right? Because they said Nacua is going to retire around like 30 or something, or at a very younger age. So it is certainly possible, that they're viewing this, and also just the longevity of the wide receiver room, that, Bryant is going to be one of those players. I do think there's a Franklin angle to this. But I mean, like, I personally think if there's a wide receiver who has the highest ceiling of anybody in the room, it is Troy Franklin. And I do think, like many people, they are very, very high on Troy Franklin and the fit with this team. So I just think that just the fact that you're able to add a guy like this with sure hands, savvy route running, physical after the catch, like absolute physical after the catch, I think is just absolute money. And he's been in clutch situations. Look, you don't need to play the highlights. Mike and I saw him all the time of the unfortunate comeback of Illinois and Nebraska, when Illinois came back and beat Nebraska, but
why? Why? You don't have to bring that up.
I did. I know.
Pat Bryant caught the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
But Pat Bryant caught the game-winning touch, and that was something in crunch time was a huge part of his game. So, like, I realized it was big time hated on by a lot of fans. He will surprise you when it comes to, like, training camp and everything. He will turn some heads big time.
So I see the vision for Pat Bryant a little different than Cam, and I see it both in a short-term and a long-term perspective. When you look at Pat Bryant on tape, great contested catch guy. Like, he's got a big catch radius. He can go up and high point those 50-50 balls. That's something that's very apparent. Blocking is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And we all know how much Sean Payton loves wide receivers who can block. I think that he's somebody who is an excellent, like, again, he can be effective outside or after the catch. It's not anything overtly special. He doesn't have elite speed, but he's really good in that area. So those are all some areas where I think that he's going to be utilized in this offense. He can play X, he can play Z, and he can play big slot. Hard worker, high football IQ type of guy. He reminds me of Tim Patrick, actually, like, quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think going back to the short and long-term view, short-term, I think this is going to be the little Jordan Humphrey replacement. I don't think Trent Sherfield is going to play much on offense. I think he is strictly going to be a special teams guy. I think that was their vision for him, bringing him in. I don't think he's going to play much on offense. I think that they're going to go with somebody who has the higher upside and is the younger player in Pat Bryant. Play him in that sort of little Jordan Humphrey power slot role because he's so good in run blocking. But long term, I think maybe they view him as the replacement to Courtland Sutton at X.
Maybe.
I think that this pick might indicate, I think that this pick might indicate that the Broncos are going to move on from Courtland Sutton after this year, and they view Pat Bryant as the replacement. Sean Payton said it himself. Bryant reminds him a little bit of Michael Thomas. Some of his route running stuff. He does run a really good slant route, so that's definitely a fair comparison there to Michael Thomas. He's got a long way to go in developing some of that route running stuff because Thomas was one of the best route runners in the game in his prime. Bryant's good, but he's not Michael Thomas elite yet. Not saying he can't get there. So I think that short term, i.e. this season, we're going to see him in that little Jordan Humphrey role. But long-term, he might be the replacement X receiver for Courtland Sutton.
Interesting.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, and that when Gage was talking, that's kind of where I was going. Like, so do we see Courtland Sutton not getting a redone deal this season and they move on from him and put Bryant in there? Because now you have, all of our receiver room on rookie contracts?
Mike, I think something gets done, and I think that's the reason why I'm thinking it's a bit of a Vele thing. And I mean, I also think that there's an angle to this where it could be Troy Franklin because obviously he did have a bit of a struggle year, and maybe they don't view it long term because that is certainly an option. I just think that Tim Patrick was the type of player, and I love that comparison, but it's the reason why I think it's the Vele side of things, because they're using Vele in that like Michael Thomas role right now of like the big slot player that's going to be work in the middle of the field and going to be the savior for Bo, and it's frankly, for as much as I wanted Emeka Egbuka at 20, getting Pat Bryant getting Egbuka at 20 to get yourself a Pat Bryant player who, according to what he was able to do in the offense of Illinois, was do far more and in a far more open wide receiver room of depth and everything. The fact you're able to do that and put him into a situation now where it's almost an easy transition for him, where he can work outside and inside, and I think he will start inside, is going to be benefiting him. And look, I will just end it with this for two things. He's going to have some very, very sneaky fantasy value, not just on team value, but he will have sneaky fantasy value for owners this year. So if you're talking dynasty, Pat Bryant late is going to be quite the pickup for someone, because I think that he's going to be a huge home run, particularly in the years and years to come. And the second thing, look, I realize, pro football grades are pro football grades, but there's a wide receiver who had a higher grade, overall receiving grade, than Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, Jack Besh. Yes, that Jack Besh of the Las Vegas Raiders now. And that was Pat Bryant.
So Jack Ken asked a question: Sutton or Franklin better? Who has a higher ceiling?
Franklin.
Are we talking like in Dynasty? Yeah, Franklin.
Just in general, I think Franklin has the higher ceiling, because if he gets his hands figured out and the ball tracking, he is basically everything that you could have asked for from Jerry Jeudy, because he's already got the relationship with Bo Nix, right, and so if he gets the separation, he gets the hands figured out, it's going to be a perfect transition for him to be arguably one of the more dynamic wide receivers.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have patience with him.
And I don't want to be negative at all, right? Like, I'm not talking down on anybody, but I think that what we saw out of Cortland Sutton last year is his ceiling. I think that's it.
Maybe.
I think that's where he stays. I don't think it gets much better.
And maybe that's it, because and I think that we should also still be excited about Cortland.
Sorry, and again, that's not a knock. I'm not knocking that at all.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is the reason why, and I know they added Pat Bryant, but this is the reason why I keep pushing the talking point that if they did not add to the room, and obviously they got Pat Bryant, but that's only one wide receiver. But if they didn't add to the room, we should not hate the idea, of them developing a room. You look at the long lineage and history of the Broncos in the last 8 years. They should have been able to develop guys like KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy, a Tyree Cleveland, for all that, for all that's worth. Like, they should have been able to develop all these guys. They did not. Obviously, there are other circumstances that got in the way. Quarterback themselves as wide receivers got in the way. And so
injuries.
They were injuries. So unfortunately, they could not develop it, right? But you finally have a coach, given the room of what they had and added some players to it, let them develop it and cook in that lab a wide receiver room that, frankly, we've been in dire need for since day one. So let's at least let the process play out. And it's kind of the same argument as we were saying with Audric Estime. Let's let that process play out, because I think there is more talent in that running back room of the duo of Blake Watson and Audric Estime than I think people are letting on. It's one of the reasons why I didn't want Brashard Smith as much, because they already have Brashard Smith at home, and his name was Blake Watson.
Yeah. Well, when they drafted Cortland Sutton was basically the Demaryius Thomas replacement, right?
Exactly.
Like, Demaryius Thomas was the guy. He was the guy that got open, got deep, 50-50 balls, everything. Cortland Sutton's not really that speedy guy that can get open downfield anymore. Like, he's not that fast. He can catch those 50-50 balls in the corner, one-handed, improbable 0.3% catches that you're not supposed to catch. He catches those. But he's not that guy that can get deep. That's what you have Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims for. And now you have Pat Bryant. And again, he ran a 4.6. Like, he's not that fast. He's a hell of a lot faster than the three of us. But I'm just saying, like he's still a guy that's going to be able to take advantage of being covered one-on-one because you have Marvin Mims and because you have Troy Franklin.
Yeah. What, and again, for Gage, like if there is one player who has been faltering because of development, it is Cortland Sutton. And, as much as we've been clamoring in years past about possibly moving on from him, the fact they nailed it with Bo Nix and now they can probably develop it, I think you are going to have the chance to see, to what you're talking about, Mike, earlier. You're going to see Cortland Sutton be that boundary top 12, 15 wide receiver in the National Football League now that we've been trying to project for him, after that 2019 season where he kind of went off with 3 quarterbacks and had the 1,000-yard season. So I think if there's one wide receiver we should be so happy about, it's the fact that Sutton can finally grow. It just happens to be a bit later than normal.
Yeah, and this is something that we can obviously talk about at another time because we still have a whole lot of offseason left.
Yeah.
But it would not shock me if Cortland Sutton was on the trade block this coming season. Wouldn't shock me at all.
I think they want to keep him here through this year.
I'm just saying get something for him instead of not re-signing him.
They would have to basically not extend him like at all or have anything, which I think they do. I think they still extend him.
Right. So I'm saying like if by the time the season starts, if he does not have an extension, I could see him being on the trade block to get something out of getting rid of him.
Well, there's also the comp pick factor you have to think about too.
Yeah.
Like they could let him walk, and if they don't sign a bunch of free agents, which I don't think they're going to sign a bunch of free agents moving forward, they're going to probably be paying their own guys. They could get a compensatory pick, probably thinking about the contract he'd sign, probably like a 4th, 5th rounder, and that's probably what you're going to get for him anyway. So might as well keep him here through this year, let him walk, and then get the comp pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so the next guy that we drafted in round 3, and this is a favorite of Gage's, so I'm going to pass this to Gage first. Savion Jones out of LSU.
Yes. I just put out a film study on Savion Jones. Another high effort, high motor, physical, intense football player who does not take a play off. He gives his best effort every single play. Even if he gets beat initially, he finds a way to get off of his block and still finds a way to get in on the tackle. This dude loves football. It's very clear on the tape. He's a great run defender. I think that he can be a gap clogger up front. 6'6", 280 pounds. So he's probably not going to be an edge rusher in this 3-4 scheme. He's probably not going to be an outside linebacker. They might put him on the edge occasionally, but I think he's going to be interior defensive line, 3-4 defensive end in this scheme.
We're talking like
I think that – what's that?
Like JFM spot?
Yes. Yes. I think he's going to be in the rotation kind of like that. I think he's going to be behind JFM and behind Zach Allen. I think that he could be the long-term JFM replacement if we're being perfectly honest here. But I love what he brings in run defense. Pass rush, he's got a good bull rush. Mm-hmm. He's got a decent swipe move. I think if he could develop like an inside or an outside counter off of that bull rush, that could really help him out in the pass rush game. But there's a lot to like with Savion Jones, and just with all the effort that he gives, that alone makes it worth the pick for me.
It's almost as if you were to put Shaquille Barrett with the size and effort of JFM and Savion Jones into one player. Like that's exactly what you're getting. A high motor, high intensity type of player. And I think because of that high motor, his athleticism has been underrated. And so I think that because you have the flexibility, and I would just say, let's just say they extend JFM by just a little bit. You have Jordan Jackson, right? And I think if you're going to ask me who I would rather have, Savion Jones or Jordan Jackson, I'm going to go with Savion Jones. So I think that, you can have as many bodies as you want. And I think that, this is the case where, that this was the beginning of the trenches, and this was one of those diamond in the rough, if you will, middle of the round players that a lot of scouts really liked, or I should say draft experts really liked. and were kind of keeping to themselves, and I think there's a reason why. Like you could it's kind of like in baseball, right? Like, you always bank on pitchers who throw 95. They always will get a look at. You look at a defensive lineman, one of the biggest things they will always look at is that high motor, high intensity player. Ty Robinson is a beautiful example of that. He goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, like the best possible spot that you could really ever go to, right? Like Savion Jones was almost that exact same type of style. It's one of the reasons why I loved Robinson here, because he is like the perfect JFM replacement, and so the only thing that's different is you can't really use them in case they ban the tush push, and you have to put Ty Robinson a fullback.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, but I think that his, like, the way that he can play and get to the quarterback, I think is going to be something that this team is going to be valuing going forward. And actually, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if, I know we're throwing around JFM, but could we be talking about the Cameron Jordans of the world, like in terms of for Sean Payton? Like, is this the Cameron Jordan for Sean Payton in this draft class?
That's a good comp.
Like, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we're going to be talking about this, because again, this is the case where you're finding players that are going to be here for 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody, like, this draft we're looking at right now, don't look at the round they were drafted in, right? Like, a lot of the players a lot of the players that we got in the second, third, and fourth round were all comped a round ahead, right? So we got them in the fourth round, but they were projected in the second or third. We got them in the third, they were projected in the second or the first. Like, we got a lot of value in the second, third, and fourth round.
Meat. I called it meat and bones.
Meat and potatoes.
Yes, sir.
All right, round 4. Q Robinson.
I like this guy.
I got nothing, so go ahead.
To answer your question from today, Gage, this is my favorite player of the entire draft. And here's why. Because it has nothing to do with edge. It has everything to do with Drew Sanders and linebacker 2.
Ooh.
Really?
Dude's a tweener. You look at the size, they're about similar between Drew Sanders. He's going to end up coming in and he's making the roster with special teams value, which already has better special teams value than Sanders. Sanders can play special teams, but Robinson already has the blessing of Nick Saban. And like, he is almost like the Matthew Slater of Alabama, but this guy's like a check the box, like captain, leader, like everything that you want in a football player on your team. He was at Alabama under arguably the greatest coach of all time in Nick Saban. That is about as big of a praise as you could really ever have. And you're already going to Sean Payton, and Darren Rizzi, who they love some special teams, don't they? So he's going to be hitting the field early as a day one contributor on special teams. And as he's developing and as things are transitioning a little bit, don't be surprised if he's the one that is actually opposite of Dre Greenlaw in the future going forward. Because I think that if he's able to lose a few more pounds, like maybe 5-10 pounds, give or take, maybe a little bit more, you're talking about a player that I think can be athletic enough to go sideline to sideline as an off-ball linebacker, and even just a downhill blitzer that we saw at times with Drew Sanders. I mean, like, it feels perfect, because then now Dre Greenlaw, to quote Fred Warner, can be that MJ in Denver, and you give Q Robinson the opportunity to be, the Robin to his Batman here in Denver. I think it's perfect, and I think it would set up so well for them. So as much as we talk about it from the JFM side of things and Savion Jones, this is a Drew Sanders replacement, in my opinion.
Love it. I will admit I haven't really seen a whole lot of his defensive tape outside of like maybe 10, 15 snaps. I've been evaluating him mostly as a special teams player, mostly based off of what Nick Saban said. And another high-intensity, high-motor player that does not give up. Kick return, punt return, blocking kicks, like all of that stuff. He's so good. And when you have Nick Saban saying, quote, he might have been one of the best special teams players that I've ever coached, that immediately perks your ears up. Nick Saban does not praise players like that at all. And he went out of his way to say that about this guy. That means that this guy is going to be a potential all-pro special teams captain, if you will. Like, he could be the next Matthew Slater, where he makes a 10, 15-year career in the NFL exclusively as a special teams player.
And strictly with Denver, too. Like, you know, yeah. Well, and I think that probably the reason alone why I think that he's a Drew Sanders replacement is a lot like him. He can rush the passer. But he's only got about one move in his bag, and that's worrisome. You know, like, and so if he's able to add a little bit more, you know, then okay, you're talking about something a little bit. And I think that for Robinson, like, the fact he's going to be somewhat also of a downhill blitzer at times in some packages would tend to suggest that's going to be used at times, you know, for packages that they didn't want to use Drew Sanders. So I think that if you're looking and you're reading in between the lines, I think that they are wanting that combination of Robinson and, you know, and Greenlaw down the line, because I think you're finally going to get that opportunity with Denver where they're not looking at inside linebacker, outside linebacker, or the linebackers on the inside. They're looking at positionless versatility, and Greenlaw and Robinson are going to fit that bill 100%.
Yeah. So we've seen Cam's favorite player, favorite pick. We've seen Gage's favorite pick. Now we get into my favorite pick. Jeremy Crawshaw, punter from Florida. I love the name Crawshaw. And when you look at this guy's leg and his accuracy, reminds me of Pat McAfee.
Rugby
like,
style.
Not personality-wise, but when you look at how he punts.
Rugby style
Pat
punter
McAfee.
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good comp, actually. I think just the kicking style. McAfee was one of the first in the NFL to really popularize that Aussie kicking style, and now it's gone so viral that punters are coming out of Australia left and right, and that's the same thing here with Crawshaw. Rizzy loves his Aussie punters. I think this is the third time he's gone after an Aussie punter. He loves that kicking style, and this is something only for the big-time nerds. Rizzy's going to change the punt formation in Denver. He did it in New Orleans last year. It's going to be more of like a college-style punt formation, and that's like the only time I've ever seen it run in the NFL. So that's going to lead to more protection and a better chance for him to boot off a big bomber, especially here in the Denver altitude. Again, man, a lot of fans aren't going to like this pick just because it's not a sexy player that you can spam the ball to in Madden, but I love pinning teams inside their own 5-yard line in Madden, and I've already started doing that with my guy, Jeremy Crawshaw. I love this guy.
How can that not be sexy? Crawshaw.
Seriously, man. Punters are people too, damn it.
And nothing against kickers and punters, but if you draft a punter, that is a green light on that punter.
Yes. And they said, like, Sean Payton on behalf of Darren Rizzi said that he was the best punter in the class, and McAfee was praising him at the combine, saying that this dude was booming balls. So if you've got the endorsement from Pat McAfee, then I've already got my ears perked up.
Yeah, there were two punters in this class that were like neck and neck, and it was Burnup and Crawshaw. And actually, talk about reading between the lines a little bit. If you are reading between the lines a little bit, it's one of the reasons why a lot of Bronco fans talk about the panic move. The Crawshaw idea would seem to me like this whole draft process of how the Broncos orchestrated it was a bit more strategic and not panic. And it was just simply from the Crawshaw draft pick side of things. But look,
and it's good value when they filled a hole. Like we had a hole at punter.
Yeah. If you argue, look, everybody talks about running back. There was probably no greater need on this roster than punter, and so and they were able to, bring in a guy who's frankly a rugby style punter version of Riley Dixon. Like,
speaking of Riley, Sorry, go ahead, Cam.
No, it's just, and so what I was going to go with that point is the fake punts are on the table, by the way.
They are. But with Riley, there is one thing we're losing with him that we're going to have to pay attention to here with Crawshaw. Riley was one of the best holders in the NFL. I don't think Denver had a botched hold once with Riley here. That was a problem with Corliss Waitman in particular. He had a couple of dropped holds. So we're going to have to see how good of a holder is this guy. Can he spin the laces and make sure the laces aren't facing the kicker? Because if the laces face the kicker, you're screwed. Laces out, Dan. But yeah, man, so you have to be able to have that ball in the perfect spot when you're holding it. We're going to have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, Jack wants to know what his average in punts. I believe it's right between 48 and 49 yards. I think it's like 48.6. It's like right in there. Inside the 20, no idea. I don't dig that deep into punters. I'm just
Andrew Mason is probably like the punt nerd in terms of like Denver media, and he gave the green light for this pick. So that gives me enough endorsement to like the pick.
I just saw Crawshaw and a Pat McAfee comp, and it's like, that's my guy. All right, 7th round pick, tight end Caleb Lawner out of Utah.
Lottery pick. That's what this screams to me. Like, this is a lotto pick. Like, it's one where it is, they hit on it. You're talking about the entire steal of the draft. Like, the steal of the entire draft. And, like, if there's a player or if there's a coach who knows how to coach tight ends, it is Sean Payton. And the last time that he was able to do something like this, he had Jimmy Graham, and it worked out quite well for him. Obviously, Graham was drafted a bit higher. Antonio Gates, not with Sean Payton, but Antonio Gates is another example of a player who transitioned, to basketball. Julius Thomas was certainly another one if you're going to be going to current Broncos country. Look, this is a lottery ticket. And the one thing I will just say this to Bronco fans on this is because everybody wants to make an argument of, why they didn't take a tight end earlier. They could have, but I think that the plans are changing in the sense that if you are going out and getting a Mason Taylor or you're going out and getting a Terrence Ferguson or an Elijah Arroyo, you're sacrificing yourself of missing out on your plan C, which was RJ Harvey. And that was too big of a risk for the Broncos to take. So you get RJ Harvey and you get something because you already had your insurance policy of Evan Ingram on the roster. You still get yourself a viable developmental tight end that you can sit and develop for 2 years because he hasn't played football in so long. Like, he just started playing football at the University of Utah. And you are gifting the opportunity where Adam Troutman is your tight end 2, not tight end 1, guys.
He is tight end 1 technically, if we're getting technical.
Right. But Troutman is your tight end 2, which is perfect because he is the perfect tight end 2 for this team. And Evan Ingram is going to be your tight end 1, maybe used a bit differently, but he is the way of this offense in terms of the joker in the middle of the field and how they're going to be trying to operate and all these targets and big slot and everything. So in the meantime, while you're going through and scoring 24 to 28 points a game, with Evan Ingram for, the next 3 years, you're out here developing a guy in your lab in maybe super soldier serum or whatever. And if he's able to work out, you are looking like an absolute genius if it works out. And if there's one thing we know about Sean Payton as of late, he's kind of a genius.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm on the record with my opinions about Adam Troutman. I'm not the biggest fan of him as our Y tight end, but he's fine. He's competent. He gets the job done. And you've got Evan Ingram there as your pass catcher. Troutman's a decent enough blocker, and you've got Nate Adkins still. But Lawner, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'm just going to call him Caleb. With Caleb coming in, you've got a guy who is 6'7" and 250 pounds. If he's able to pan out, he can be that inline guy for you. If he's able to be a blocker, a competent blocker, that's the first step. He's a basketball player. He played basketball at Utah. Last year, he had 4 catches for 4 touchdowns. One of them, which is the one I'm going to feature in a film study, was against CU, where he just went up and boxed out the defender and literally was taking a small defender out of the play, essentially. It's a basketball move. So that's what we could see out of him in year 1. If you need a jump ball guy in the red zone, then Caleb could be your dude. I'll have to see if he can block. That's something that's going to reveal itself during training camp. But if he can, then that's an encouraging sign that you might have your inline tight end of the future here.
Yeah. Well, and just, I mean, when you look at some of the measurables that he was able to put forth, dude's 6'8" and like 259 pounds, and he ran, get this, he ran the same 40 time as Terrence Ferguson.
Yeah, dude's an athletic freak.
Like, the dude's freaky.
Yeah, so that alone makes it worth spending a draft pick on. Lottery ticket that is an athletic freak, and if he pans out, then you might have a really good player here.
So that is the entire Denver Broncos draft. Where do you what do you guys give the Broncos for a grade?
I have it as a B, like B plus.
I mean, the more tape I watch on it, honestly, I have to give it an A, because I think that even though there were better players in terms of name value on the board, the Denver Broncos got the perfect football players that made sense for them at this time. They got their running back who closely profiles to Ashton Genty. Sean and George said themselves, like, we were looking for somebody who profiled closely to Ashton Genty because we knew we weren't going to be able to get him, and Hardy fit that bill. You've got a really good developmental defensive lineman in Savion Jones. You've got a starting nickel with all kinds of versatility in Jahdae Barron. You've got a special teams ace in Q Robinson. You've got your punter of the future in Jeremy Crawshaw, and you've got your developmental tight end that we've been looking for in Caleb Lawner or Loader. So either way, man, I think that this class is going to provide value, and you're almost guaranteed to have at least 1 or 2 of these guys hit. Not all of them are going to hit, but some of them are going to hit.
Yeah, I had Denver at a solid B plus until they got Crawshaw. Then it went to an A plus. So we're at a solid A plus for Crawshaw.
Full grade, a full bump.
Full grade on a punter. That's what we're doing. No one profiles to Genty. Whatever. I will say this: Genty on the Raiders and Omarion Hampton on the Chargers with Najee Harris does make me a little nervous. Just saying. We'll see how the run defense works. But to be fair, I think Denver's going to have a top 2 defense this year anyways.
They're going to have a top 5 defense anyway. And
too. So I want to go with outside of the Broncos. Who had the best draft? Who had the worst draft?
I think there's a pretty league-wide consensus opinion on who had the worst.
Falcons.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Really?
So, listen, they needed some help in the trenches, and the Shamar Stewart pick in the first round was viewed as a reach. The Dylan Fairchild pick I do like, but outside of that, they did not do a whole lot.
As far as one that did quite well, I think you don't need to look no further than the New England Patriots. I thought the Patriots really did quite well. Getting Will Campbell, you go get Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams that you get to add to your roster with, Stephon Diggs on the roster too. So you basically have weapons, and my take is I would not be surprised if Williams is wide receiver 1 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I just think that they've done quite well for themselves. I actually think Jacksonville did a really, really fine job for not necessarily, doing it necessarily the most conventional way, but they were aggressive and they wanted to be aggressive and they were looking for the best weapons that they could possibly compile. And look, they love Trevor Lawrence, and you can get him as much players around him that's going to benefit this is going to be great for the long run. And the fact you get a perfect complement, like to Brian Thomas, I think is great. And if you do pay him, it's in a tax-free environment, and it's going to be able to work. Yeah. So you're going to be able to pay premium for either cornerback position or even wide receiver, regardless of what it is, because I think it's going to be. I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming up, if you will.
Yeah. So I actually have two. So worst, I have Cowboys because they didn't help CeeDee Lamb at all. Like nothing. They drafted an offensive lineman. Whoopee! Cowboys didn't do anything. Then you look at the Giants. Now, if Jackson Dart works out, great draft. If he doesn't, they're all getting fired anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it all hinges on Jackson Dart because you can't go into the season after drafting a first-round quarterback with Russell Wilson. Not good. Abdul Carter, great pick. Jackson Dart, if he works out, A+ draft. If he doesn't, F, and they're all fired anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. Some other ones I think did really well are your usual suspects, the Eagles and the Ravens. Yeah. Obviously, there's the ethics thing with the Ravens with the Mike Green selection, and then they went out and drafted a kicker to replace.
Yeah, they got a kicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they drafted a kicker.
Best kicker in the draft too.
Yeah. And then the Eagles, they did such an excellent job maximizing value, getting stud after stud as usual. And then the pick Seattle traded for Milroe, that's pretty crazy. Or that the Raiders traded Seattle for Milroe, that's crazy. But yeah, man, those are some other teams that I think did really well. And Falcons, yeah, that's another one that you can definitely question what they did. Trading a first rounder to the Rams, a future first rounder to move up. Ugh, not good, man. Not good at all, especially if they're not.
15. That's a top 15 pick.
I agree. It is. I don't think the Falcons are going to be good next year.
That said, I will say the players and that they got, I think, is one for their team. Like they needed some needs. Like they addressed the interior defensive line. They obviously got an edge rusher with James Pierce, and they got they also got maybe the best ball hawking safety in the entire class in Xavier Watts. So yes. I think they did okay on some of their picks. It's just the way they went about it and and giving up that first to go, move back in was crazy. I also thought the Rams, I thought the Rams were, kind of had a bit of a nice draft as well. And as far as the puzzle one, I know I kind of mocked at times wide receiver to them, but the two that were just a bit puzzling to me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. I think that those were a bit puzzling. Look, the Packers should have gotten a corner, and there's so much uncertainty around Jair Alexander. They really don't need a wide receiver. If they wanted to go get a wide receiver, they could have done it a bit later. The Matthew Golden pick in Green Bay, I don't know if it makes all the sense in the world. And then you go on and you get Savion Williams a bit later when you already have a room of Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed and Christian Watson, and some of these other playmakers. It's just, I don't what are we doing here? And it's the same thing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not entirely sure if the Igbukah pick was the smartest thing in the world. That said, maybe this is just saying how much they feel about McMillan, their last draft pick that they had. I don't know. But then you go out and you get Tez Johnson, right? And you get Tez a bit later, which I think the value was incredible to get him that late.
Unless they're going with Igbukah to replace
Godwin.
Mike Evans.
No, Godwin. Evans. It could be Godwin, but I just think
they just re-signed him, right? Godwin?
They did, but I don't know, because if it's injuries, I don't know.
Yeah.
It
All
just
right, so-
isn't making sense.
We've looked at NFL wide. Now I just kind of want to look at the AFC West. Now, since Jack was so kind to give us a C+, they get an F. So
Agree.
Raiders get an F. But no, I do want to talk Kansas City, LA Chargers, and Raiders. I think that as much as it sucks, I think the Chiefs had a really good draft. They got one of, if not the best tackle in the draft at the very end of the round, which I hate, but it's the Chiefs. Like, what are you going to do?
I actually think if you're going to be asking who had the better draft between the Chargers and the Chiefs, it was the Chargers. I think that, you know, they were able to get Amari and Hampton at 22, and then they go out and get Trey Harris, like as their next pick. Like, I mean, like that's already two of the top players that I wanted for Denver at times. Like if I was so, you know, for the Broncos, if I was to, you know, go and do running back, he was either Travion Henderson or Marion Hampton at 20. And, you know, I love Trey Harris later. Right. And so the fact that you're able to get Trey Harris, who's a perfect complement opposite of Lad McConkey, and then you get Hampton. I think the only puzzle part of this was the news that came today where they're going to be using a bizarre unrestricted free agent tender on J.K. Dobbins. So if you are Amari and Hampton and fantasy owners, sorry, doesn't seem to be going well for you.
That could be a nutty room, though, right? Amari and Hampton, Najee Harris, and J.K. Dobbins. That could be an oof. I like that.
It could. And then they also drafted a defensive tackle that, oh, God, he looks nasty.
Caldwell from Oregon.
Yeah, he's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little worried about that. And
he's gone. All right, so
what a freeze frame.
If we're looking at the AFC West, you got Denver, you got Kansas City, you got Los Angeles, you got Raiders. Rank them 1 through 4 in draft.
You mean as far as the draft?
Yeah, like who had the best draft, who had the worst draft?
You know, I actually think that
Gage.
Hi, sorry, my internet dropped.
I will say I think that, to just keep it simple, every single team in the AFC West had probably one of the better drafts of anybody in the NFL. So I'll just preface it that way. I probably would put the Broncos maybe last, actually.
That hurts.
But it's not a testament of like how good I feel about the draft. Like I still love the draft, but I think that the Raiders had probably their best draft they've had in years. I thought the Chiefs, if I was to make a case, I probably would put the Broncos over the Chiefs. But I think that, you have Raiders. I would probably say Chargers, Raiders, and then Chiefs. Or you can flip it between us and the Chiefs. But again, they all had great classes, like great draft classes.
Yep.
Yeah, but we win it with the punter, so it's fine. All right. Is there anything else that we did not talk about? Oh, undrafted free agents. Do we want to do that, or do we want to do that one later?
Let's do that next week when we need something else to talk about, because that can take a little bit of time.
Sounds good to me. All right, we'll hit undrafted free agents next time. But we appreciate every single one of you that joined us in the chat. A little bit of a longer episode, but that's because apparently there was something going on this weekend that we needed to recap. So good time for us, good time for you. Make sure you go to the network and like and subscribe. It just takes a millisecond to just hit that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you check out Gage Madrid on Broncos Syndicate. Puts out all kinds of videos. That's where I get all my information because I don't trust anybody else. And then check out Mainly Broncos on Wednesday nights with Cameron Parker. And he's got 3 other hosts. Brandon, Maddie, and Jordan. Did I get it right?
Yeah, look, if there is a must-watch episode, it would be tomorrow because Jordan hates Pat Bryant. So expect some entertainment when it comes to that particular selection.
That was a scathing article.
Yeah.
Hey, wasn't Pat Bryant the one that burned Travis Hunter that one game? Or was that a different wide receiver?
That was a different receiver. I can't remember which one
I
though.
was gonna say, when did Illinois play Colorado?
That's
Yeah.
fine. It wouldn't surprise me anyways. It's Travis Hunter. All right. So thanks everybody for joining the show. We will see you guys next week, hopefully. We'll see how it goes if there's any other news. But thanks for joining us. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We will see you guys later. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out.